all of us have two things in common. And I'm pretty sure about this. In fact, I don't even have to know you to know this about you. I don't even have to share your background. I don't have to share your relationship status. I don't have to share what you think about faith or where you're at on your faith journey to know this about you and to know this about us, that we have two basic things in common. One of those things is regret. Regret. And that is a universal human thing. And no matter where you come from, no matter what family you were raised in, no matter what part of the world you live in, my guess is that you probably have somewhere in your past regret. Now, when I look back at my past, I have one huge regret from high school, and it's something I didn't do. I look back all the time and just totally regret not playing high school football because I love football so much, but my priorities were in a different place in high school. I didn't want to make the commitment. It didn't help that the head coach was also the dean of discipline. And let's just say I've been in his office a few times and didn't want to spend any more time with him. So either way, it's just I look back and go, oh, what if I did that? That would have been so fun. That would have opened so many doors. And I just look back going, man, I regret that. I regret that. And there's a man named Daniel Pink. He's an author, and he just came out with a book called The Power of Regret. And what's really interesting about this book, I haven't read the whole thing or anything like that. I've just heard him in an interview talking about it. What's really interesting about this book is they did a survey leading up to the book. And over 19,000 different people from 105 countries chimed in to say what their regrets were. Just a real simple survey. What do you regret? And people would list their biggest regret. And they were able to sort of narrow down each of these regrets to four sort of basic categories. The first one was foundational regrets. And this was described as something that people thought was a good idea, but they were fooled, and it led them to make a bad decision. A foundational regret. There was regrets that fell into the category of boldness regrets. So this would be like my high school football thing. I didn't do. I wish I would have. I wish I would have stepped up. I wish I would have, said that. I wish I would have took that job. I wish I would have been bolder in these scenarios. There's another category of regret that they discovered, and it was moral regret. And so this would look like, I got that wrong. I messed up. I thought it was right, and I did it, and I look back and I see now that was not just a wrong decision, that was immoral, and that didn't help me at all. And then there's a category called connection regret. And this is perhaps one of the most significant ones because I feel like all of the other categories affect the connection category. People look back at their life and they regret not making amends with a family member or a friend. They look back over their life and they regret something they did or didn't do for a relationship. And all of our regrets, most of them, I would say, have a connection to relationships. And that's the second thing that we have in common. All of us have regret, something we wish we would have done, something we weren't bold enough to do, a connection we didn't keep. And all of us have relationships. And relationships, sometimes, maybe most of the time, that's your biggest regret. When you look back, when I look back, not playing high school football was one thing, but when I look back from childhood on, I look back and my biggest regrets are relational in nature. I look back and I wish in that moment I would have been a better son. I look back and I wish in that relationship, I wish I would have been a better boyfriend. I look back and I go, I wish I would have been a better brother. I look back and I wish I would have been a better friend. I wish I wasn't such a self-centered, self-serving friend. I look back and I wish if I could have just been kinder, if I could have just been more kind with my words and my actions in that relationship? And think about this question. If you knew then what you know now, would you do it differently? Would you do that friendship differently? Would you redesign how you lived out your college years and what you partook in and who you were involved with? Would you redo that first marriage a little differently? Maybe you look back as you've raised kids, or maybe you're currently raising kids. Are you going to look back and go, I wish I would have disciplined differently. I wish I would have had a different approach. I wish I would have allocated my time better from where I'm sitting, because now I look back and I wish I would have known what I know now, because I would have done it differently. Like when you look back at your life and your decisions that affect your relationships, like would you just like to control Z anything? You know? Would you just like to hit the cut button? If I could have just cut that out, if I could have just not said that, and for some of you, it could be if I could have just had that one argument back. If I could have just not got so upset about that one situation. If I could just have one word back, I would just go back and I would cut it out and I would replace it with something that was more kind. But I didn't know that then. And now I have regret. If you could go back, maybe listen a little better. Maybe you would have thought through what you said before you said it. Maybe you would have decided differently. But at the same time, isn't this true? Isn't this next statement true? You have learned most from what you regretted the most. Like, isn't that true? Like when you look back and you see what shapes you and what shaped you, oftentimes it's on the other side of a serious regret. And you've never been the same since. And so there's a little bit of wisdom on that side of the regret for you. And it looks like this: well, I'll never do that again. I totally regret that relationship. I totally regret sending that text message. Or you think back and go, wow, that decision really hurt me. I put myself in position, and if I had just been wiser, if I was just a little more mature then, if I saw a little further ahead, maybe, just maybe, I would have handled that differently. And it's ironic because none of us want regret. But I believe you do want wisdom. I like wisdom. And so there's this tension. Is there a way to learn how to become wise without experiencing regret? Is there a way to learn the way without getting off the way and making a mistake that you can't have back, having a conversation that you can't redo? Or do we always have to hurt our way to wisdom? Now, in the series that we're in, we've been sort of bouncing around the book of Proverbs, and what we're doing is we're trying to make Proverbs a relational guide. Proverbs is a group of sayings and different ideas of wisdom to help guide us. And one thing that pops up over and over in the book of Proverbs is the word fool. And actually, in the Hebrew, there are 5 different types of words used for fool, at least, in the book of Proverbs. And I want to read Proverbs chapter 1, verse 4 and 5. And we're going to identify one of these fools. We're going to look at it, and I think we're going to be able to answer the question about regret and wisdom. Proverbs 1, 4 through 5 says this: for giving prudence. So the Proverbs of Solomon are for giving prudence to those who are simple. Knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning. And let the discerning get guidance. Now, the word for fool in this verse that shows up other times in Proverbs is the word simple. Simple. The simple. Sometimes This is who we are. We are simple. And what I want you to understand is that this does not have anything to do with someone's intellectual ability. If you're foolish in this way, or you're this type of fool sometimes in your life, it doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. It doesn't mean that that you're not sophisticated, or you have the ability to assimilate knowledge and all of this kind of thing. But what it does say about you and about us at times is that we are gullible. We're in the moment type people, that we don't always think down the road. Sometimes we're thinking right now. And in that, sometimes you and sometimes me, we're easily influenced by the people around us. And we're also influenced by the approval we would receive by doing something or saying something. And the simple person can be very frustrating because they should know better. They should know better because they're intelligent. You're intelligent, but consistently fall and make mistakes. Even though they know better, even though you know better. Zockler writes, to define the word simple, it literally means to be open, or properly it means to be open-hearted, meaning those who are susceptible to external impressions and those who are so easily misled. You get the picture of the simple person correlating with the idea of a young person. They just don't have enough experience yet to know any better. But some of us, we're not so young anymore. And yet we still fall into the category of being misled. Solomon gives a powerful picture in Proverbs chapter 8 of the simple fool. It's actually a poem, and the voice that you're going to hear, hopefully through my voice, is a personification of Lady Wisdom. And here's what she says, here's what she observes, and here's what we need to learn in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 6. At the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the young men, a youth who had no sense. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house. At twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark night set in, then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute with crafty intent. She is unruly and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner she lurks. She took a hold of him and kissed him, and with a brazen face she said, "Today I have fulfilled my vows, and I have food from my fellowship offering at home. So I came out to meet you. I've looked for you, and I've found you. I've covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. My husband, he's not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money, and he will not be home until the next full moon." With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once, he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. What is Solomon doing in this story? What he's doing is he's giving us a very vivid picture of the process that has led to every regret, that you have. And it always starts with an intention not to have any regret. Nobody sets out and goes, let me see how I can mess this up today. The simple, as they're going along their way, what happens? We're tricked. We're persuaded. We're wooed. And we're guided to conclude. Here's what we're guided to conclude. After being worn down and broken down to compromise, we finally say in our hearts, I won't regret this now. Initially, you know it's wrong. Initially, embracing that advice could be wrong. Initially, deciding to have that relationship is wrong. Initially, foregoing those boundaries is wrong. Initially, harboring those thoughts is wrong. And you know that, and you try to stop yourself. But as you go down the path, something happens in you and in me to change our minds to believe that we won't regret what we're about to do, which is something foolish. Here's the teaching, Proverbs 8:24. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Don't turn, but learn to discern. Many are the victims she has brought down, speaking of foolishness. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. What do the simple lack? Well, they lack two basic skills that Solomon is teaching. And there is good news. These are skills that we can learn. These are skills that we can hone. These are skills that we can get better at. The first one is discernment. Discernment. If we were to break that word apart, the first part of the word is dis, which means apart. And the second part of the word is cern, which means to separate. And so if you have discernment, you're able to tell things apart, even when they appear amazingly similar, like wisdom and foolishness. You're able to tell them apart. You're able to rightly divide what is wise while you're being flooded with distractions and desires that are pulling you and tricking you and wooing you and affecting the way you walk and the way you do relationships. Discernment. The second thing that the simple person lacks is prudence. Prudence, and we don't use this word anymore, and that's a shame because this word is so powerful. This word it needs to be brought back into our language because oftentimes this is the problem. The word literally means subtlety or being slick or cunning in a really good sense. It means to be crafty, to be wily. And properly in the Hebrew, it means nakedness or smoothness. And so what is the writer trying to communicate to us? He is trying to give us a metaphor. He's saying people who have prudence, they have the capacity for escaping the wiles of others. If you are prudent, you have the ability to be open, to be considerate, to be learning, to have your heart ready for relationships and to learn what's wise. But at the very same time, you have the ability to avoid. You have the ability to recognize danger. You have the ability then to guard and most importantly to escape a potentially regretting situation, conversation, or decision. Proverbs 27:12 says, the prudent see danger and they take refuge. What do? They hide. They guard themselves. They don't keep going into that direction. But the simple keep going. They go for it. There's a little prompt in their soul. They know this is probably going to go wrong if they continue with this conversation or this relationship or this night out or whatever, and they just ignore it. And they just keep going. and they pay the penalty. And we need more than ever, and you need more than ever, and your relationships need more than ever for you and me to be cautious. That's what prudence is. Caution, coupled with forward thinking and good judgment. Why do we need this? To avoid regret. How are you going to avoid regret if you don't proceed forward in all of your relationships, all the types of your relationships, without discernment and prudence? Now, Bronnie Ware, who wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, spent the last 3 to 12 weeks with elderly people who had passed. And she wrote down 5 different regrets that people sort of communicate as they're on their deathbeds in their last weeks of their life. And they always sort of fell into these categories. And here's what she wrote. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected. This is what people who are getting ready to pass began to formalize. Another one was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. I wish that I had let myself be happier. We want to avoid regret. And every single one of these regrets flows into the river of relationships. They're all connected to relationships. They all are centered around how it affects people, how they were portrayed with people, how they had connections with people. So at the end of our lives, we don't want to look back, and we don't want to have relational regret. What if there was a way to avoid regret? Or at least limit it? What if there was a way to maybe learn from it faster so we don't have to feel the pain of regret and the pain of mistakes, and we can just be wise today? What do we need to do to take steps to become a better spouse or friend or parent or whatever? What do we need to do? And I'm going to tell you what we need to do. We need to learn to discern. We need to learn to discern. What do we need to do? We need to be able to tell things apart. We need to be able to recognize this is a wise decision and this is an unwise decision. We need to be able to recognize this is a wise pathway, this is a wise relationship, this is a wise approach, this is a wise word for me to say, and this is a dangerous one. And this is one that might lead me down the road that I don't want to go on. It's hard to discern. But lucky for us, there's a guide. There's a guide that can guide us as we fix relationships, as we maintain relationships, as we ask questions like, should I be close to that person? Should I be friends with that person? Should I forgive that person? Should I have a dating relationship with that person? There's a guide that helps us avoid the same mistakes. You know what I'm talking about? You have the same conversations, you say the same word that you wish you could have back, and it happens every week at the same time. And you wish you could just get over that cycle of mistakes in your most important relationships. What do you need to do? You need to learn to discern. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at 5 skills that are in the form of questions that you might need to write down or put on the notes app of your phone, because they're going to help you learn to discern. They're going to help you exercise caution. If you apply these, you're going to avoid regret. You're going to sharpen your decision making, and I think you'll be better at relationships. The first question is this: do you regret your regret? Do you regret your regret? Think about it. When you think back to your biggest relational regrets, do you regret it? Listen to what David admits in his biggest relationship mistake. He committed adultery, and then he had that woman's husband murdered so he could have her as his wife. And as he realizes the incredible mistake he's made, here's what he writes. Psalm 51, verses 3 through 6 says, "For I know my transgressions. I know my transgressions. I know where I messed up. And my sin is always before me. Talking to God, against you, you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me, yet you desired faithfulness, even in the womb. You taught me wisdom and that secret place. Is your sin, your most regretful sin, relationally, is it always before you? Because regret coupled with repentance, it can make you wise. You don't want to ignore where you've screwed up somewhere. It can guide you. It can redirect you to a right path. But here's the thing about regret. It can guide you, but it will not guide you without hurt, without pain, or without experiencing shame. So what is your biggest relational regret? Is it still teaching you? Are you still humbled by it? What regret have you yet to acknowledge and repent from? And if you don't, I can promise you, it will take you down a path of regret. It'll continue to ruin your relationships, and it will be what lead and guide you to more emotional and relational harm. Do you regret your regret? What regret are you getting close to is the second question. Do you remember the story of the young man who is, heading in the direction that we read a little bit ago in Proverbs chapter 8? What do we learn from that? Regret, hear me on this. Regret starts with small, poor judgments, putting you in the neighborhood of regret before you buy a house there. Small, poor judgments, little decisions that position you to be persuaded and swayed and wooed. You see, we are in the neighborhood of regret. We are in the market of regret before we buy a house there. The young man was heading in the direction at twilight. What's going to happen? He's heading that way. Small little decisions will lead you to regret. So what regret are you in the neighborhood of right now? What if you don't correct will lead you to a regret that you don't want to carry? What addiction are you harboring that if you keep harboring it, it will lead to relational regret? Like, are you looking too long at her or him? What are you hiding from your spouse? What are you in the neighborhood of? I don't know, what are you considering maybe doing? What's wooing you or pulling you? What regret are you getting close to? What caution signals are you ignoring? Pay attention. You're being wooed. You're being swayed. The third question, who is speaking in? Who is speaking in? All of us are processing our relationships. Some of us are processing our relationships through media, through podcasts, through YouTube, through TikTok. Some of us are processing our relationships the old-fashioned way with conversation, Who are you allowing to speak in to guide your relationships? Like, who around you cares enough about you to give you true guidance? You have people like that in your life. Sometimes we don't like their input. Oftentimes because they don't say it very well, But imagine if we could be the kinds of people that could say something to our spouses or our friends that would really help them. What if we learned how to just communicate our concerns? Wouldn't that be amazing? And then on the flip side, what if we were just open to correction? Who is speaking in? Are you letting God speak into your decisions? Have you consulted him on if you should date that person? Have you consulted him about that life decision? God, the creator of wisdom, is he even a factor in the decision making? Does he get a say in how that relationship goes? Whether that marriage continues? Seek God. Test everything you hear from everyone, even your closest friends or your mom, and run it through the Word of God. And if it doesn't line up with God, then throw it out and follow what God says. Because God and his ways will guide you to places where you won't have regret. Proverbs 24:6 says, the more good advice you get, the more likely you are to win. And this is what you want. Don't you want to win at relationships? Don't you want to avoid regret and stay married and stay friends? Don't you want to avoid grudges and bitterness? And when you see that person, you're like, oh my goodness, it's that person. Don't you want to get away from that? I think you do. If there is a relationship problem, a great step is to talk to someone you trust or to talk to God about it. And keep letting people speak into you. And keep your posture open to listen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. Look for the wise way. The fourth question is, what's the narrow way? So as you're thinking about your relationships, as you're thinking about, should I address this? Should I do this? Should I say this? Should I commit to this? Let's just put this question in the back of your head. What's the narrow way? When looking at a decision, when discerning what to do, consider this principle that Jesus shows us in Matthew chapter 7. Here's what it says. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is narrow and the way, and I like the way the NSB says it, constricted. The way is constricted that leads to life, and there are few who find it. One way leads to regret. The other way leads to life. What's the principle? Lots of people pursue relationships in a way that is wide. And where do they end up? With relational regrets. And few people end in a place without relational regrets. The narrow way. Why does this happen? It seems obvious. Let me go the narrow way. But no. The narrow way, it's not popular. No one's wooing you to be forgiving when someone doesn't deserve it. No one's wooing you to be kind towards people you don't like. No, the narrow way is harder. It's more constricting. It feels like there's less freedom, but I don't know about you, but I'm so pained to watch marriage after marriage and young person after young person choose the wide way and end up with regret. Narrow is the way, hard is the way, constricting is the way. Do you know what's narrow and unpopular? Waiting until marriage to consummate the marriage. Why is this so important? To avoid relational regret. Well, do you know what's not popular and narrow and hard? Not figuring out how to love one another, even though you committed to live together forever and ever and ever. That's narrow. That's hard. That means denying yourself. That means becoming more like Jesus. Do you know what's narrow and unpopular? Having parameters for who you decide to date. And not compromising. Just because you're lonely, don't compromise. Know who you should date. Do they lead you in a direction of Jesus? And if they don't meet that criteria, it's not a good relationship. Because it's going to lead you to do what? Regret. And you don't want to end up in a place of regret. It's unpopular to be guided by moral convictions that feel like restrictions, but don't fall for it. Don't be wooed by it. Don't be persuaded. Maybe the question you should ask when making a decision is, what's the narrow way? Maybe you should be looking at it like this. Is this boundary or is this commitment, is this constricting me appropriately so I don't veer off and get hurt? I would rather be constricted now by the boundaries of Jesus than later by my regrets. The final question is this wise for me now and later? Always process your decisions with later. It may be wise now and it may be wise later, but if it's just wise right now, it may not be the wisest decision for you to make for later. And we've all got a picture, don't you? If you don't have one, you should get one. Where we want to be, who we want to be, what story we want our life to tell. We want to get to the end of this journey saying, I kept my relationship with God. I walked with Him and I completed the race. We all want to get to the end of our marriage, being in a place where we weren't just, cohabiting with one another, but no, we couldn't live without each other. That's where our relationship was. We want to get to the 25th anniversary and the 50th anniversary and the 60th. We want to live in such a way where we don't have regret. Rick Warren writes, every decision has a price tag. It will cost you time, money, energy, reputation, talents, and resources. And so as you're making decisions today, is this activity, is this approach, is this tone, is this attitude, is this decision, even if it's a small little decision, is this commitment, is this arrangement, is this date I'm about to say yes to, is it good for me now? Is it wise for me later? Is it wise for the type of story I want to tell about my relationships later? Proverbs 20:25 says, it is a trap to dedicate something rashly and only later to consider one's vows. Will that decision, will how you go about your relationships, will your lack of prudence and discernment, will it cost you a relationship and replace it with a regret? And if you're a young person in here today, can I just speak to you for a moment? Be wise now. You haven't made the relational mistakes to the degree that most of us in this room have. Be wise now. Everyone in your life, when you're young, they're going wide. Why? Because wide pulls you. It's what everybody's doing. It looks fun, it looks harmless, but don't fall for it. What if you avoided relational regret? What if you set parameters on how you're going to date, how you're going to approach sexuality in a way to guard yourself from experiencing regret? What if that was you? Don't you want to be in a place where you have a relationship, not a regret? The Proverbs of Solomon are for giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. You can either add to your learning or you can add to your regrets. You can choose to be discerning and prudent, or you can choose to learn from mistakes. All of us, we can't always avoid regrets. It's not humanly possible. But we can become wise. We can become wise. And what if you could have the skill of discernment? What if you could recognize what is wise? What if you could live in a way that avoids regrets? Imagine if you became the kind of person right now in this marriage, At this time in your life, you learned to discern. Like you were able to look at your past or someone else's past, and you were able to let that regret guide you. Like what if right now you're in the neighborhood of regret, but you turn around and you head right out of that neighborhood and go back to where you need to be because you don't want regret. Like imagine right now if you filtered your marriage through the advice that someone gave you that you still haven't applied yet. What if you just said sorry? What if you just did what someone helped guide you to do despite what pride tells you to do? What if you chose the narrow way, the harder way? You would avoid regret. Jesus loves every single one of us, and he knows the mistakes that we've made. Isn't this interesting? Jesus doesn't regret making you. He doesn't care what your decisions have been. He doesn't regret coming to this world to take all of your sin and shame, and he would do it again and again and again and again. And maybe, just maybe, the relationship you need to repair, the relationship that you might have the most regret in because you've just ignored his advice in your life. Maybe it's Jesus. Maybe you need to restart that relationship today. And if you need to do that, we'll have some people back in the 103 over here. You can do it right there from your chair. Just get back with Jesus because he will guide you. He's a better guide than regret. Let's pray together. God, we thank you so much. We thank you so much for wisdom, for discernment, for prudence. But as we walk out of these doors today, we're going to be bombarded with temptations and pulls and woos. And God, we just need you to guide us. And we invite you in right now. Help us be discerning. Help us to lay our life down. Help us to head in the direction of healthy relationships. Help us to lay down what is blocking us from that right now. Help us to flee neighborhoods of regret. Guide us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, would you stand? Let's sing.